Welcome to the regular Open Space Committee meeting for September 4th, which is also hard to believe.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Sorry, we don't have a secretary, so I gotta record it.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, you want me to start again? Welcome to the Open Space Committee, September 4th, which is hard to believe. It's 4:32 p.m. We're in the main meeting room. And the first agenda item today is the March 6th minutes, which really was the last time we had a full meeting. Is that shocking?
Supposed to be, and then we had to cancel it.
In
Okay.
June.
July.
My gosh, I feel like I was here sooner than
It was
March.
July.
So,
That is the last time we had a full meeting.
Was July?
July? This
March?
particular minutes, the March minutes.
so I'm gonna ask for, if anybody has any questions or issues with the minutes. We've read the minutes.
One little spelling
Sure.
thing. I don't, do you have a copy?
It's on the back of your.
Okay,
I'll
because
give you mine.
I can just tell you real
Is there a
quick
printed
where it
out
is.
Thank you.
It was under 3.
Oh, okay.
Talking about the Wagner property.
Okay.
Now, how come it's not here? Was I reading the wrong minutes?
This is what was in the packet.
There was a
though.
reference to the Wagner property in the minutes that I was reading, and it's not here. It was spelled Wagner, and
Was it
it's,
was
Is
it
that
a,
in the work group maybe?
yeah, it might have been in a work group meeting minutes.
no, I thought I was reading it with what you sent out,
Yeah, this is what came with the agenda packet.
Okay, then I don't have anything to say.
Okay, then let's, is everybody okay with the minutes as they stand?
I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, so we don't normally make motions and approve them, do we? We just,
I'm supposed
I know we're supposed to. We don't,
I'll move the.
yeah, thank you.
I read this.
Any discussion on
I read
items
both
other
of
than
them.
Helen thinking something's there, but it's,
I read both of them, but this one I also
Okay.
read, so.
okay. So if there's no changes to the minutes, all those in favor of the minutes, I say aye. Susan, you agree? Oh, you were
I was-
abstaining.
Yeah, I wasn't
I'll
at the
have,
meeting.
we'll have one abstention and
Aye.
aye. So 4, but I'm saying 4 yeses and 1 abstain. Just being very, okay. So for tonight's meeting, I had spoken to Susan earlier and I asked for an update on the town forest dredging project. And just so you know, that was actually one of our last Board of Selectmen meetings. We asked for updates on capital projects that had not been completed because we funded this, I think, 2 years ago with ARPA funds. So Tom Roy reported on it, but I wanted the reporting to be done tonight. So do you have that update? Who has
Yeah.
that update?
I can update it.
Okay, thank you. And I can also send the capital report that Tom Roy gave us.
So they were finishing the permitting for that, going through the town boards. They anticipated that was gonna be done by the end of August, early September, I believe, and then they were gonna start work right after that. So the work is anticipated to be done in September.
Okay, so you guys, the dredging should be done in September.
Yeah, so is that like I just wanted to ask Wendy, like we should do it at like the environmentally right time of the year?
Marjorie and I were just speaking about that.
Okay, sorry, I missed that part. Good.
So, yeah, we think, based on what I was just told, September was pretty good.
they start.
And he's gone through the
Yeah.
permitting, I'm sure that question might have been asked during one of the permitting boards, so
Yeah.
Public Works has been handling.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check on that. The other question I had about that is I wanna make sure that we dredge it deep enough, because if it's not deep enough, it's not cold enough for the fish to live in. And previously what happened is the last project, we installed that bypass, which is good, so that we can maintain it more easily in the future, and they added a bunch of sand to the beach, but I don't think they did any dredging, so we basically added more stuff to it and didn't deepen the pond at all. And then the third thing is there is a patch of Phragmites on the edge there, and the risk is just spreading that all over like a metastatic cancer. So like that could be dug out and like like dump someplace where it's not gonna grow? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about, Tom?
I believe so, and I know Tom knows what that's, Tom Roy knows what
Oh,
that.
yeah, he
what
knows
that
all
is.
about the
So-
knotweed,
so they-
phragmites,
yeah,
all
so
that
they-
stuff.
I'm sure he's not in any interest of spreading it around, so.
Okay.
he most likely
You know what, I'll
will.
just check, I can just remind Tom about that to make sure.
And I made a note too, just to
Okay.
note too.
You have to wonder how it got there.
Well, it got there because of the last project. That's it, I mean, you disturb stuff and then
Stuff in, yeah.
you bring stuff in,
You
so,
brought, okay.
yeah, it's started with the last project and it's very manageable now. I mean, that was on my list of like hot spots to deal with, but since you're gonna be,
Easy to get little fragments on.
yeah, little pieces
Machine.
will grow out of anything, it's really bad.
Do you know, I just want, this is for your information. Some governments have chosen to use Phragmites, especially on the shoreline, but in their wetlands and whatever. Yep, and as a holding
Soil
And,
stabilizer, it's
on
disastrous.
the coastline, it's killed
Oh my
all.
Oh, they did it in New York, I
If
saw
there
a
were any
project.
fiords, if you go to the beach out of
Horrible.
the Saybrook, I can't think of the name of it, it's one like the second beach out of the town. And you go, you can see this wall and it's so thick,
Yeah.
animals cannot get through.
Wow.
You approach it and it's taller than me, you know, it's huge. And it's come on land, it's out of the water and it's moving and it's like a wall that's moving at you. It's really deadly.
Yeah, you know, in England, you cannot sell your house. In England, you cannot sell your house if you have knotweed on it.
Yeah.
Wow.
In England, you have to do what?
You cannot sell your house, you cannot,
If you have
if you
Phragmites?
have the, or
Knotweed.
knotweed, no, not Phragmites, but
Oh,
yeah. they
Same
use
thing in
them.
Arlington, Massachusetts, actually.
Yeah.
oh, really?
And so many of these plants were planted initially by
Yeah.
encouraged for conservation use, like multiflora rose and Japanese barberry and autumn olive. Autumn olive used to be sent home with the children in Simsbury to plant.
But in
At least it's edible. And so is knotweed, actually.
Yes.
Knotweed is out.
Yeah, you could like barberry.
And it's young.
Don't get Susan started, she'll tell you all the things.
Oh, yeah, Marjorie, we're planning a whole,
If you
like,
can't beat it, eat it.
eat the aliens
Yeah.
event, but we never really mobilized it. I collected some stuff and tried it
I
all.
was surprised in the list you gave me, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that.
And garlic mustard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm moving
Let the
on.
minutes reflect
Moving on.
that you can eat.
So it's gonna happen in September,
Yes.
you'll pass along the concerns to Tom
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Susan.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
we'll dredge that pond. Or for our
Swimming in it next
$50,000 ARPA.
You can have a
Expenditure.
ribbon cutting swim next year.
Oh, I would like to, I used to take my kids there. Okay, so the next item is the open space inventory list. And I wanna paraphrase how that got onto or just to add for everybody's knowledge. So as everyone, most of you here know, we had the item on our Board of Selectmen agenda about selling a piece of town property. We had quite a bit of quite a bit of public audience who came and spoke out against it. Since then, I've gotten a copy of the inventory list of open space from 2015, I believe it's from, that was put together by the Open Space Committee. And the questions on, is this property real open space and subject to 21-8, right, in the charter or code? Is it so I invited Mark here to address those questions because the answers that I've received are that this property is not deeded open space, but it is town space, a town-owned vacant lot, non-conforming or something to that, and is on the inventory list, but is really not deeded open space. So I'm gonna let Mark talk and answer your questions, but I do wanna open it up to after that discussion to figure out how do we have a true formalized open space list and also a list of these non-conforming town-owned lands that we may or may not wanna sell if they don't meet the open space list, and how to formalize that. Does that sound like, I'm talking to Mark, a lead in for you,
Thank you very much for that.
and then you guys can ask questions of Mark, okay?
Good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for making time. Wendy, I appreciate you putting me on the agenda. So, you're all much more familiar with all of this than I am, but let me just give you the 100,000-foot perspective of this. We have the inventory of town-owned open space that was dated 2015. It's a work in progress. It says a work in progress on it. I would say that it's been a work in progress, therefore, for about 9 years. I'm here to, among other things, get some feedback from you as to what that has actually meant over the last nearly decade, whether in fact there is a continuing effort to update the list, to augment the list with additional information, or whether there hasn't been any effort at all. The reason I wanted to get that question answered is because one of my duties under the charter is to submit the town manager's budget to the Board of Selectmen every year. And I suspect that one of the reasons that, if in fact the answer is that there hasn't been any additional work done on this since 2015, my sense is that may be because there wasn't any funding to do it. I'm happy to have that conversation with folks. So I am here actually as an emissary of peace and goodwill. I am not here to set the town on a path of selling open space, and I'm really glad to have an opportunity to set that record straight because unfortunately when we put the item on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen to refer it to the Planning Commission for an advisory opinion, the mere putting it on the agenda triggered a rather, to me anyway, a rather surprising response. And I think that was partly my fault for not making it clear on the agenda itself what the purpose of this was. But I'm here to clear it all up today. So initially, the inventory is a tremendous piece of work and incredibly valuable to us even today. There are some properties on there that are correctly and properly deed restricted. Clearly parks, clearly forever wild, clearly conservation, no question about it. No need to revisit them. There are others at the other end of the spectrum that, in our view, clearly shouldn't be on the list. And this lot that got everybody a little perturbed is one of them. It is not a deed restricted lot. It's not a conservation lot. It's by no stretch of the imagination, and even the town attorney has opined, there isn't anything that would formally designate it open space other than the fact that it's on this list. So that gets us to the question of the day and the elephant in the room, which is, does the mere placing of a property on this list designate it legally as open space or not? And while I say it doesn't, some may say it does. The real issue, and the reason I'm glad to be here tonight, is because if it doesn't, then we need to figure out what we can do to make sure that all of these properties that should be properly designated, and I mean really designated, not just listed and say, here's the list, are deed restricted and properly protected. So when I had the opportunity to speak to Helen, one of the things I was led to believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there wasn't adequate funding to do this in what I would say the more thorough way of, if it's not deed restricted, going to the Board of Selectmen and deed restricted.
I didn't hear that few
Well,
words
what I'm
before.
suggesting is that there was a reason back in 2015 why this was done this way as a list, as opposed to a property by property assessment of what needed to be done in order to legally protect it. The most obvious method of protecting a property is to file a deed restriction on the deed, and that solves that problem. There are some other ways it could be done, but just creating a list in and of itself doesn't do it, right? So rather than take the perspective that this property is not open space and therefore it doesn't need to be referred to this committee, we don't want to take that controversial approach. We'd rather take a collaborative approach, which is, can we all work together to go through this list and make sure that it is deed restricted, and how long and how much would it cost to do that? And what other ways might we properly get it protected? Can we have the Board of Selectmen pass an ordinance, for example, to designate something as deed restricted, or however we can do it? We're going to look into that. The other thing is that there are some properties that are not on the list, that should be on the list. And that's also something that my office is looking at. For example, we're gonna be taking, for back taxes, somewhere between roughly about a half a dozen properties that might very well make it onto the list as open space.
And they're privately owned now.
They are privately owned now. One of the reasons that that has not been done is because it hasn't previously been the practice of the town to take property for back taxes when there didn't seem to be any reason to do it if it was just a sliver lot. Well, there are a couple of reasons to do it. Number one, maybe it's open space and it should be protected, in which case we would be happy to bring it to this committee and get your opinion before we take it. And in fact, the charge of this committee is more clear in the charter when you talk about acquisition than it is when you talk about disposition, right? So we would respectfully like to get this committee involved in looking at some of the properties that we propose to take for back taxes. They are vacant, non-conforming lots, nothing on them, right? So not designated open space. But if we take them, perhaps they could be open space and designated property. Alternatively, they might also be merged with the adjacent lot, which is what the current property is, the purpose for us proposing that it be sold, is to merge it with the adjacent lot. It's not just to sell it to the highest bidder, but it's to put it back and put it, and actually, as the Planning Commission properly noted, the contingent recommendation to the Board of Selectmen is that it be sold with that lot line adjustment as a requirement, right? So that it would become one parcel. It's currently not buildable. So a number of things I've touched on, and I want to take your questions, but the point is that there are properties that for the first time the town will take for back taxes where it wouldn't have done it before. And that's an opportunity to add to the list. Secondly, we don't think the list adequately protects the biggest assets of the town. It's open space. The argument is it's open space, and let's make sure that there isn't any discussion like tonight's about, well, what is the meaning of designated open space? That's number two. And number three, back to this specific parcel, we asked the Board of Selectmen to refer it to planning for an opinion. Planning could have said, we don't like the idea of selling it. As it happens, planning gave us back a favorable recommendation. The next step in the process is under state law, we're required to have a public hearing. And so on Monday the 9th, Wendy has just approved putting it on the agenda. It'll be on the agenda being released later today or tomorrow for the Board of Selectmen to, if they so choose, set a public hearing. We cannot put the required sign on the property until we know when the public hearing is. So the order in which you do things is important. First is the referral to planning that's required by state law. Second is the public hearing. And third is the advertising of the public hearing. So the next step will be on Monday the 9th to get the Board of Selectmen to set a public hearing for September 23rd. After that, assuming that's done, there'll be a sign placed on the property notifying the public and so forth. So our position today is that it's not open space. It doesn't need under the section of our code 21-8 that Susan has cited a number of times. It does not require a referral to this committee. It doesn't mean we're not here to talk about it. It just means that my office does not want to set a precedent. And that's what this is about. Doesn't mean we can't have the conversation. Doesn't mean we don't want everybody's input. But there's got to be a point made somewhere, and I'm happy to make it tonight, that it's not open space simply because it made it onto the list. With that said, I'd like to take any questions. And I will say, I'm the one that will make the proposal to fund the work that needs to be done to protect our open space. I'm the one that will dedicate the resources of the town manager's office to do it, even if it takes us 3 years or 5 years. The fact that you couldn't do it because it was such a big undertaking, as you told me, was not, it makes no sense to me. Why can't we do one at a time? It's not impossible to do it. So we are here, as I said, to help protect open space. But we have identified fewer than 10 properties that we think should be, assuming the adjacent property owner wants them, should be merged. It is costing us money to maintain them. It's costing, in the case of the ones that we haven't done anything for, going back to the grand list of 2009, every year we're sending out taxes, every year we're sending out delinquency notices, even in cases where we have a bad address, we're required to put notices and so forth. We've done it for, these liens last for 15 years, so it's a perpetual expense to the town. So we propose taking them and then coming back to you probably in January or February after the tax deed sale and getting your opinion about what to do with them. So, and Wendy, I don't know if I answered any of your questions there, but I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
So before you guys, what my big question first is the way this land is defined. The question was, is it subject to 21-8 in the disposition of open space? If you look at the inventory, it's on there, so you could assume it's open space. I didn't know there was differences before this, that's deed designated open space. This, according to the true deed on this property, is not, right? So I'm trying to understand from the open space committee, do you accept that it's really not open space land? And is it, and that's marked, and then whatever, that's my big question. Then the other 9 properties that fit the same bill, right? Those are maybe on the list, but they may or may not be open space. And then where do we go from there to get this list, as Mark said? Is this 2? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna, Susan, it sounds like you have stuff to say. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
I somehow this has really gotten off track, and I'll address a couple of things that Mark said. First of all, thank you for coming to the meeting. I appreciate that because I'd like to get this clarified as soon as possible because this is a serious kind of misunderstanding. If the land was deed restricted, we would not need ordinance 21.-8. The ordinance was put in place exactly for this purpose. And so since I think it's really important to understand exactly what we're talking about, I made a handout about Simsbury open space, of which there are 7 types. Town-owned open space is only one type. And among town-owned open space, there is either restricted open space or unrestricted open space. And this open space is unrestricted. So we all agree that it's open to be sold. So is 80% of Simsbury. And that's the reason why we have the ordinance, to make sure that if we are selling our town-owned land, we go through the proper process of review, etc. This is a big deal that was the topic of a state constitutional amendment in 2018 that passed by 85% of Connecticut voters, is the problem that public land was being basically sold or traded or whatever, and there wasn't sufficient review. Simsbury was actually ahead of the curve on this in setting up this ordinance because of a similar situation that came up over in, I think, Terry's Plain or whatever area, and there was a big, huge kerfuffle, and that's why we have the ordinance now, is to make sure that everyone's comfortable. If we are gonna dispose of public land, we have a process that everyone is comfortable with. Since that ordinance has been put in effect, we received a referral for disposition, and Open Space voted favorably on it. The beef I had was I felt like the price wasn't fair and there wasn't notice of the zoning change and all that kind of stuff. But we voted for disposition. So we've handled this situation before and we voted for it. So the idea that open space thinks that everything is open space and can't be disposed is absolutely not true. The inventory is not something that we made up. We use the town engineering data maps, which have the exact same data coding back to our fundamental GIS database. This is coded as town open space on the land use map, the Simsbury open space map, the Simsbury Parks and Rec master plan, town open space inventory, and every other possible document you can find. There is no category of deeded open space or designated open space. And if it had that, we wouldn't need the ordinance because it wouldn't be available for sale. The ordinance is specifically for unrestricted open space. So that's point one. And
Can I ask a question there? or
Yeah,
you want me to-
please,
So why on the inventory, is the inventory a global compilation of all open space? Because we see that some are deed restricted and some are not.
Because, say that last part again,
Referring to the inventory,
okay?
there isn't any way to tell without us doing the work whether it's deed restricted or not.
you could look at it on the town Simsbury open space map, which is on our GIS Map Express database, on there where there are 7 categories of open space.
But that isn't a legal document, is what I'm saying. It doesn't legally protect the property is the key question. Right? What can we do to make sure that if you want that level of oversight, that it actually must happen, is my question.
We could probably off the top of our heads come up with the very few pieces in town that either have deed restriction, development rights, whatever. And perhaps that's a valuable piece of work, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the properties on the inventory are town open space per every data source available. They may be deeded or not, but they are town open space. And that's what the ordinance is about, is town open space.
The undeeded.
Right, or the other thing, the other caveat that I put on here is some deed restrictions could be partial or could have some use restriction, right? So every deed restriction doesn't mean it can't be sold. It could say it could only be sold for ag, or it could only be sold for certain uses, or parts of it could be used. So there could be full, partial, or zero deed restriction.
Well, I think what I hear, we're in complete agreement. The inventory not only says it's a work in progress, but it says this is a working draft. It's not yet the proper basis for decision making.
But I would
That-
say the town engineering maps are.
Well, not legally, not for the purposes of determining whether the Board of Selectmen must refer it. That's the only question today, is must the Board of Selectmen refer it to this committee for an advisory opinion? And my position is no, and nothing I've heard here has changed that. I know what the intent was, and I'm offering to fix that all these years later. And this is a conversation that could have come up years ago, but it didn't. And that's not my fault. I'm offering to fix it.
This isn't about fault.
Well, I mean, the ordinance doesn't achieve what,
No, I
I don't think it does.
I really disagree with that. Because the purpose of the ordinance is to make sure that land that isn't restricted has a proper review. Why would we write an ordinance for deed restricted land? It doesn't make any sense.
So can I just ask a question? This law was added to 2016, which was
Right.
obviously right after the inventory, so it's almost have kind of flowed together, right?
Well, the inventory was started way
Before, in right, but I'm just saying somehow there was an effort going on before my time.
It was presented to the Board of
Right.
Selectmen in 2016.
So the question that I am grappling with, and I've asked Mark, is in this ordinance, it's designated as open space. It's almost like general terms open space of different definitions of open space. And maybe it's just that it should have been more, knowing where we are today, but the wording should be more definitive, that it's any open parcel, you know what I'm saying, like any open parcel. That's kind of what I'm hearing. The word open space here, not to get semantics about it, means all this land. It's open space, whether it's town-owned, not deed-restricted. That's what I feel like I'm hearing from you, which
There's
is
7
why this
categories.
is in place.
There's 7 categories on the open space map. 21-8 only applies to one category. That's what I'm saying.
And which is the category?
Town-owned open space, or town open space.
Which doesn't necessarily only apply to deeded, is what I'm hearing you say.
Correct.
So you're saying this parcel is open space. It's in the open space.
It's town open space because it's coded with number 3. Number 3
Okay.
on the town land use map, on the Simsbury open space map, on the appendix for Parks and Rec, on the inventory is town open space. It's a number 3
Okay.
parcel. That's what is town open space. And that is what ordinance 21-8 covers. And we're reasonable people. We already voted the parcel that came before us, we voted to dispose of it.
Which parcel?
Steve Anton.
Antonio parcel.
Steve Antonio's
Oh,
parcel.
well, I mean, nobody's asserting that the committee is hell-bent on not approving anything, Susan. I never made that allegation. I don't think that's true. So you
I didn't hear that either.
it came in before you, that's another parcel, and you voted favorably. Here's the elephant in the room. The ordinance attempted to close a loophole, and it can't do it legally. You are not successful by doing that. That was the intent then, but it doesn't get you where you need to be. And the reason is because the charter predates the ordinance, and an ordinance can't trump a charter. The charter created the Open Space Committee. It created the process by which these things happen. And you can't, by ordinance, say all of these properties are open space. You can't do that. It just makes no sense. If we want to go and look on the land records to determine whether it's open space or not, only the land records can define that legally. So the question is, do we have to refer something to this committee? Doesn't mean that we wouldn't ask anyway. But do we think as a group here tonight that every sliver lot, every orphan lot, to use those terms, right? Every lot is open space, capital O, capital S, that we need to die on that hill to protect and preserve.
No, but I think what we're concerned, it should come, but this is the only board that has all the land use, is supposed to have
Yeah.
all the land use people on it. And there's a value of having the input from all the different land use people to look at a place. And there's nothing, I know Tom has brought this particular property up to us before, and one of the things we had, and we had discussed that it was expensive for the town to mow some of these properties. We also recognize that the town has a proclamation that we are a pollinator-friendly town, and this was one of the lots where we had sort of thought, well, let's not mow this as frequently, let's mow this once a year, that will cut down on the cost. We will mow, the verge is gonna be mowed for sight lines anyway by the town, that's regardless. This could have been a property where we could have discussed that this might be a good pollinator pathway meadow. It is not connected physically to other properties, but the birds and the butterflies and the bees don't mind. So it's a matter of, can we have a discussion that some of these properties that, yes, it could go on the grand list, but we've had so many apartment buildings going on the grand list, this is not going to make a heck of a difference. But it could, for fulfilling another goal that the town has, for being a pollinator pathway.
And
That's
didn't you
the
say
sort
the
of
Grange would
discussion.
mow it too, if that was a
If
custom?
needed, the Grange is
needed.
willing to
So
mow
that's
it.
the
Small
sort of
But the other
discussion
point is,
for
we got
these
free, we already got a free
isolated
offer for
properties.
all
It's
kinds of
not-
seeds and stuff.
It's not that this is the hill to die on, it's that there are other conversations going on in
Sure
town.
you do it
and
at the
we
end,
can't-
though.
We're not, I love to hear that we might be getting more open space, that's great. And I love.
First time in
I didn't
9
hear
years.
that.
I know that.
I didn't hear that,
Well,
Marjorie.
no, we had Meadowwood,
Yeah.
Meadowwood. And it's lovely to think that we will be moving forward to put better protections on it. But these are town-owned properties, and the town should have more input, the public should have more input as to how we want to use that particular sliver. It's not a big sliver, but it's, it could have a potential, and I think that's one of the things in the open space definition. It has a potential for some open space use, and this one has a potential for open space use, and I think that's where
You really think
I
so? A third of an acre?
as a
On
matter
corner?
of, yes,
Oh my
I have,
gosh, next
yes,
to the,
yes.
I don't see it, but.
No, you don't see it, but conservation sees it, and that's why we
Okay.
have these different groups who have
Right.
different insights and different expertises on it. A quarter of an acre, especially if you show the public, or a third of an acre, that's even better. We're talking, the pollinator pathway, we're just talking about putting little things, a third of an acre is huge. And it also sets a precedent for the other people that they could do that with a third of their yard.
Yeah.
I mean, we got 2 acre yards. I have in the back of my yard a meadow that's about a quarter of an acre, and I can tell you, I got insects in there.
And I do too, it's
What we
amazing.
need is you know, the connection of these things. So even though these things are isolated, they're still important.
I will say that we did talk about that though, just so you know, and people on the planning commission didn't see the connectedness between that and it's
But that's
not.
again, that's only the planning commission, they're
Right,
not looking
right.
at that, but
No,
conservation.
no, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
the
well-
connectedness, they didn't see that.
No,
They
but
didn't
that's
see that
it's
because
not
it wasn't-
physically connected.
Right,
And for mammals and things like that, snakes, frogs, that makes a difference. For birds and insects, that
Yeah.
connectivity can be
Hops up,
hopscotch.
yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I
Can
heard that.
can I recognize Helen? I
I'm
just,
just, no, after she finishes.
yeah, when you're done, I'm
So
just,
that's the sort of thing, the.
Number one,
Yeah, just-
there's several things I'd like to comment. Number one,
That
the
was a
planning
good point.
commission didn't think about that because it wasn't presented for you to think about. If
Yeah,
you'd
it
come to the board, to this committee first,
They
you
did,
would have
somebody
had,
on the
you
commission
would
brought
have
it
had
up.
that
Talk
input
about
from,
connectivity.
so.
Yeah, we did talk about
We talked
connectivity,
about, but
Right.
Okay.
only in the physical section.
correct,
Yes.
correct.
So I guess I'll base my comments on process.
Yeah.
And why I, in the committee, I think agrees with me, the process that you chose to use is not the one that we think is correct. You know, if you go back and think, you used the word intention several times, and that you knew the intention of what was discussed back then. Okay, you don't know the intention if you don't have a first one-to-one opportunity to hear, you know, the discussions. The discussions are in the minutes, the discussions are in those of us who have been there. So those intentions are not understood by some present people purely because you weren't there. Let's start with 824. The intention, if you want to think of that word, the intention of 824 was to protect these lands that are owned by towns by the process that they put in place. That was the intent of 824 because they knew that there were towns that did not have their own process in place.
Ellen,
Okay?
just to butt in, 824 is not just about land, it's a
No, it's
general
about-
municipal
Of
improvement
course.
clause.
Oh, they're so big. Right,
Okay, just
but I'm
clarifying.
thinking process, but the 824 has been used traditionally for that, with that intent in mind. Simsbury does have process in writing to be followed. So that, like Susan used the term, we are ahead of the curve maybe. We worked very hard for that. So the process could be 21-8, and then if 24 is necessary, then you go to that process as a backup. But if you have your own process already in place and it's ignored, then you're not following process as it has already been established. A couple of comments I'd like to, the intent of the inventory. Work in progress meant it came together for a lot of reasons. And we felt it valuable to have as much information possible for ecological reasons, for history, for process, to have the record. And it ended up being valuable in this subject, in that we were trying to have all of these properties reviewed and placed in a category of being protected with a deed, whatever. And I had mentioned to Mark that it was a big problem. We were told it was a big problem, a big project. We felt that it was important enough that it had to be done because of how much this town has as these assets. So our intention always was the next process must be taken. We prepared this for you. Don was excellent in initiating it, but then we added things to it and the process. And the reason why, Mark, that it was not ever done, the work after 2015, is because it was not ever funded for us. We kept asking for it, in several of the budgets, we just kept asking, and we kept getting the same answer, it's not, we don't have the funds, we don't have the funds. The process for Simsbury is there. I have to wonder why town staff did not provide that information to the Board of Selectmen so that they could have an opportunity to respond to that history and to that fact.
Yeah.
They didn't provide it to the planning commission so that they could have had a more a complete discussion.
So, yeah, I wanna just, can I go on your?
Interject.
So planning commission, we were at that meeting, and the planning commission was only told to look at A24.
Correct.
To not look at anything
Correct.
in the code. So
Correct.
that was all that was, they were charged with. I was
Correct.
surprised, but that was how it was handled. What I
That's because that's by law, that's what we were charged with, we have a small sliver,
I'm not-
and that's,
so that was done, so.
I'm not saying you did anything
No,
wrong.
I'm just saying,
you did
we had a
what-
small sliver, and
Exactly,
that was what,
I agree, that was what the charge was, you
And
did your
you
charge.
were not. The same for
So-
both commissions.
So I'm in an awkward place because I'm on the Board of Selectmen, presented, I support the town, and I support the town manager and the business of the town. I'm also the chair of open space, learning from you guys. So I'm
Did you say you weren't?
No, I'm learning from you guys,
Oh.
learning,
Well,
because I'm not the best open space chair, just gonna put that out there. But what I'm hearing here is, and I'm gonna propose this, Mark, you're here too. According to this body, this is open space and falls under 21-8, that's what I'm hearing. We have it on our agenda to just set a public hearing for the Board of Selectmen, okay? And that's for next.
It can be for whenever you want.
Okay, so I'm proposing here, if we followed we don't have to agree with the referrals here, right? It asks open space, parks and rec, conservation shall review and report to the Board of Selectmen on the disposition of the property.
let me interject. Those particular bodies are represented on this committee, they just aren't here.
But I'm
So
saying,
if
I'm saying,
separate issue.
yeah, so what I'm
Right.
saying,
That's that.
so let me just finish what my thought, and you can just,
I'm sorry.
and Mark, anybody can disagree. The issue is whether it's legally this or not, and I guess like this body doesn't care, like is what I'm
Can I
hearing.
just say, this parcel isn't even on our agenda, we're not even supposed to be discussing disposition unless we receive a referral from the Board of
Well, I'm
Selectmen.
saying, what I'm
So I'm just
saying
putting
is,
that out
we're
there.
talking about this list, so what I'm saying, I think, I mean, if you
If
just,
they bring it up.
is we put it on, we have it in our agenda for Monday to set the public hearing. I believe at that meeting, we could ask conservation, open space, and Parks and Rec to provide a recommendation or referral that we can have in time for the hearing. So we have that at the time of the hearing. So we hear from the public on the sale of the land. I mean, does it say the order that these things have to happen in?
Yes,
It
No.
does.
the
No,
It's
order,
not.
the order is that the Board of Selectmen initiates it, gives 60 days for open space, conservation, and culture, parks and rec
Okay.
to provide a report or a review or whatever. And after receiving that, if you're still favorable about disposing of it, then you would send it to planning via 824. So 824 is nested within 21-8 and set a public hearing.
Yeah,
That's in our
Respectfully, not-
ordinance.
I don't care what's in the ordinance, respectfully, state law trumps the ordinance.
yeah.
Federal law trumps state law, so I don't care what the ordinance says, the fact is, the
820,
referral to
state
planning
to
must
state.
go first, nothing happens, respectfully, unless, it's gotta go to planning first.
No.
After that, if it's designated, whatever that term means, then it goes elsewhere, and that's what we're talking about. But there isn't any question that it goes to planning first. You can't pass a local ordinance that says to the state, well, we'll do 824 when we get to it, and only if they give us a favorable recommendation. That's not true.
Yes, that's true, because 824 is initiated by the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen, and by
Which we
the
did, right?
by the referral to planning, 824, I don't believe it requires a public hearing for one thing, and it also.
It doesn't, and let me
It
just
doesn't,
insert
yeah.
there that according to state law, public hearing is required by Public Act 7-218, which is codified as Connecticut General Statute 7-163E, and that's been on the books since 2017.
So 824 requires a public hearing?
No, it's not 824, it's a separate statute. So since 2017, there must be a public hearing if it's valued at over 10,000, which it is.
Okay, that's a
So
separate issue.
that's what, so when you talk about the order of things, it's true that there isn't a piece of paper that says A, B, C, D, and you follow this order. In the absence of that, we have to use the reasonableness test, and that is state law trumps our charter trumps our ordinances, our ordinance trump our resolutions. So respectfully, the referral to planning must come first. As I said before, I can't advertise, and the other requires that we put a sign up on the property. You can't notice the public hearing until it's been set.
I just wanna say that the reason why the referral to planning doesn't come first, and why our ordinance is like an umbrella over 824 is because the initiative for this is from the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen, by referring it to planning, the Board of Selectmen is basically saying that we're in favor of disposition, and they're giving planning the opportunity to either turn it down or put it in favor. If you read 824, there is actually only an opportunity to override a decline from planning. There isn't even something to deal with to make an opinion if planning approves it,
I think they need a supermajority, is that right? I haven't read
to
that.
decline it. But there's nothing to,
If planning said no, the board would need a supermajority.
so it needs a supermajority,
Right.
that's correct.
That is not the case, by the way, if this committee were to issue an unfavorable finding, which goes to, it's kind of very illustrative, that if open space doesn't decide to, issue a favorable recommendation, there's no requirement in state law or the ordinance
Right.
that says we need a supermajority. It kind of doesn't make sense.
Right.
And again, it all comes back to not whether I want us to all collaborate, which I think is what Wendy is suggesting. I don't want to set a precedent that if it's not restricted, we've got to come here. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
That's
Can I
what I'm
say-
trying to clarify.
Okay.
That is what I'm trying to clarify, based on what we've defined as open space, and what is a very simple and orderly process, which is an umbrella process over 824, which is the state law. Towns are allowed to make laws that are more strict than state laws. You're not allowed to make laws that are less strict than state laws. So what our town ordinance does is an umbrella policy. It says the Board of Selectmen initiates a request for disposition and refers it to Open Space Conservation Commission and Culture Parks and Rec. The reason why they're doing that is they want to hear from these boards to see if they even think it's a good or bad idea. They may not move further and refer it to planning.
Yes.
If everyone says, oh no, this is an old growth forest, this is critical habitat, this is a connected thing, this is a this is a park that people use even though it
But you
doesn't
have an
say that.
elected, can I
Then
just
you
like-
wouldn't refer it to
I
planning.
know, but then you have an elected board
Yeah, and I
that
wanna-
wouldn't
I
be
wanna get to
making
that.
any decision,
Right.
it would be, what elected board is making that decision?
Right.
No, it would go back to the Board of Selectmen.
No,
This,
but I think to
and
your-
then
to
they
your
would
point-
refer it.
No,
to
no,
your
but you're
point,
saying they can put the kibosh on without planning, who is the body.
No, they get to
Not be-
decide. No, but
No,
it's
the way it should,
So can I?
No,
I'm just talking about the
saying,
first
I'm
step,
not
can people please listen to me, because I'm just,
I know,
I'm
but
just,
you're
I don't
talking about
understand why
taking
there's
out
so much
planning.
confusion about this. We have an umbrella over a state statute. Our umbrella says, okay, Board of Selectmen looks at a piece of land, they say, maybe we wanna dispose of it. Let's see what the land use boards say. They get the reports back, maybe we all say, okay, it's useless. They go, okay, let's send it to planning, because planning is the rightful place per 824 to
Right.
then give us a referral. Then if planning says yes, it's done. Nothing else needs to happen.
well, it goes back to the board of.
That's not part of 824.
It is, it goes back to
No.
the board of
Can I
selectmen.
just-
It
No.
it has to go, we only do a referral, Sue.
read
Can I just-
that goes back
Yeah,
to the.
I wanna just go through 21-8.
I know,
okay?
it does
So,
go, oh,
I
not
don't-
21.
Which is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
no, I'm talking about the 824.
Can I just read the town attorney's memo?
824 does go back to.
Because-
Okay,
Because Susan is
Adjourn the meeting.
making some legal assertions, and neither, for the record, neither Susan nor I are a lawyer, as far as
Point
I
of
know.
information, could
I'm
you
not
just
a-
tell me what you're reading from?
I'm reading from a memo from our town attorney, Mr. DeCrescenzo. Charter Section 615 established the Simsbury Open Space Committee. The purpose of the committee is to, quote, "to assist and advise the Board of Selectmen in identifying and evaluating land
Yeah.
deemed suitable for acquisition and preservation, and in administering the fund for land acquisition and preservation." That is what the charter says the purpose of open space is. It does not say anything about disposition in the charter.
But the word suitable
is-
for preservation
That's true.
is relevant to
Agreed.
acquisition and disposition.
Yeah, I agree
Let me
with that.
finish, I'm just saying,
Okay.
it doesn't say anything about disposition directly. He goes on to say, Town Ordinance Section 21-8 defines a process and criteria for the disposition of town-owned space. The process is limited to, quote, "a parcel of town-owned real estate designated as open space or any interest designated as open space," end quote, quoting 21-8. The parcel at issue does not appear to meet that definition.
It's designated by being on the
It's not.
map.
It is
There
not.
is no
Okay.
database of designated open space. Why
Listen,
would
can
we?
we resolve this question, because I agree with Wendy, we can reach a resolution, but we're not gonna, I can't do it frankly under duress. This is a very simple question. What does the word designate
Oh.
mean?
We know all this, that's not a question that we need to ask.
Well,
For point of information,
yeah,
again, are you saying that the state statute that says we have to have a public hearing?
Yeah.
Is 7-163E?
yes,
Is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay, when I
You
read
must have a
that,
public
it says the Board of Selectmen shall conduct a public hearing on the sale, lease, or transfer of real property outside its border.
Well, I don't know about that.
outside of.
I don't
It's in,
think that's
it's online, this is fake, so,
All I can tell you, Helen, is that the Board of Selectmen since 2017 must have a public hearing, and we've asked them to set a public hearing.
okay.
Anybody can go to the public hearing, either a member of this committee or any other committee can go to the public hearing. But I really think we should try as collectively to answer the question, because it goes beyond this one parcel. This is really the test case.
Can I
What-
make, it 824, it has to go back to the Board of Selectmen. We make a positive referral, it goes back to them. That's
And I
what-
was gonna read some
Yeah.
things in 21.
Well, 21, yeah, but what we did, it goes back. We vote for a positive referral. We're not making any, it's up to them. They could do away with what we said. It doesn't, really hold water in that way. But the bottom line is, if it's open space, who cares what the tagline is? Do you know what I mean? If it's open space, why not be collegial and just send it to this, you know what I mean? And I mean, honestly, what's the big deal? That would be my thing. It's like, so, I felt a little badly. It came to us, we did what we were to do by law, by statute. But honestly, it's like, just send it, get the input, because to Helen's point, maybe there was information that would have been brought forth by the land use boards that we might have had more of a discussion on that we didn't have, and maybe not, but maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think common sense and
Yeah.
you know,
That's what,
trumps all the laws that, if, before it becomes a gleam in someone's eye that we're gonna sell something, it belongs to the town. It behooves us to have a conversation with our land use boards and get input.
So that's
before.
what I'm trying to say. I've been trying to say this, and if I read 21-8, it doesn't, I could be wrong, it doesn't say A or B has to come first when I look at this. So B is the proposed disposition shall be subject to a public hearing before the Board of Selectmen and to review by planning and zoning pursuant to 824. Doesn't say first or second.
Right.
A does ask for the referrals to the land use boards, okay? The failure of open space to report within 60 days after the date of official submission of the proposal, unless that period is extended by the board, shall be taken as approval of the proposal. In case of this disapproval, the reasons shall be recorded and transmitted to the Board of Selectmen. So I guess what I'm saying is what I was trying to say is we can, if we wanna put out the public hearing, schedule it. The board, I guess we'd have to do it for 60 days, right? And allow the land use boards to provide a response within that period in time for the public hearing. The way I look at it is we would have all the information at the Board of Selectmen at that time of public hearing to weigh it all together. Now, I understand Mark's point, legally, it really technically doesn't have to go through 21-8, depending on how you define open space or how it's classified. But in light of being collegial, right, and working together with these boards or commissions, unless there's an issue that this has to happen within 60 days, I personally would rather do it that way and get all the information at once. I'm not saying we wouldn't sell the land, right? But I'm saying everybody gets their opportunity to weigh in.
I think that's where I have a problem with the process. Before it becomes, we are going to sell the
And
land,
we're
we are
gonna be at
negotiating
odds
with
here.
We need to look at all these different properties and say, do we? You know, are there alternate uses? Are there better uses?
So-
Are there other things we can do?
Well,
besides
well,
putting
could-
it
oh,
on the
If I
ground?
could just weigh in here, I see the C is changing. Here is the issue. The issue is that hopefully this committee would agree that, let's just take a number, 300 parcels of open space. Hopefully this committee would agree that administratively there are several, a dozen or so, that don't need to be dragged into this process unnecessarily. That's all I'm asking.
I
Is that
disagree.
there should
I
be
totally
some
disagree.
that we could administratively streamline because
No.
they all meet the same criteria,
So-
for example.
Okay, no, first of all, I wanna let Tom say what he was gonna say, cause he's,
So I think with all the discussion, and I appreciate the chance to talk for a minute. I think with all the discussion back and forth, I think the original intent that
Slow down.
the original intent that Mark was trying to get across was
Yeah.
with the open space inventory here left was kind of unfinished, that he wants to close that loophole so that we go through and say, this is, whether it's deed restricted or it's not deed restricted, let's put it, we've decided as a group or as a town to put it in that bucket of preserve forever. So we don't have to run into this discussion again. And to that point, and if he's willing to fund that project, that's great, something I'm not capable of doing. And somebody did a real, Don and the intern did a nice job of getting this going. There is a category in this, as they divided everything up, they did take put some things in the agricultural category, in the wetlands category. They left a category, parcels classified as not fitting in any category, and that parcel that we've discussed is right in the middle of that. And when they labeled, park and rec maintenance level, there's only two that were labeled as that we have to mow. It's this one and the one on Old Farms, the little piece on Old Farms, I think, the side of the property. Everything else is, I don't know specifically, other than addresses here, what it looks like, but typically if it's a C, we don't take care of it unless a tree falls onto somebody else's or is gonna fall on somebody else's property. But the whole point being that there's a list here to start of focusing those and assessing those. Now that there's somebody willing to make a commitment to funding.
Well, I'm only making a commitment to doing that extensive work.
Right.
If there's something on the other side of that equation,
Correct.
yeah.
right,
Correct.
which is, there have to be some administratively de minimis parcels that this committee agrees in a gesture of collaboration, don't need to. That's what a negotiation is, what Wendy is suggesting.
Why are we
Well,
negotiating about
we're
selling our own
negotiating with
land?
ourselves.
No,
This is
what
crazy.
we're trying to do
This is totally,
we're trying to-
totally off base.
Susan, respectfully, we're trying to streamline a half a dozen properties.
But you
There are
know,
only
shouldn't
half a
be.
dozen, we should be able to look at a half dozen pieces of property and say, yeah, this one would be, we're not saying we don't want to sell anything. We're saying, let's have the land use boards look at the 6 properties and see,
Okay.
are there other uses? And then if we say, we'll send it to the board of selectmen, and the board of selectmen can decide what to do with it.
So is it your proposal that the Board of Selectmen has to refer it to the land use boards?
yes, if it's town
Because
open
that's not what the
space.
town attorney is saying.
The town attorney was really, I'm not sure what question, I'd like to talk to, I mean, I've never spoken to him personally, but I could definitely speak to him about this.
He is a nice guy.
Yeah, of course, I've known him forever,
Doesn't matter
but
whether he's
but
not-
it doesn't,
No, I'm just
it
saying-
doesn't matter.
I agree.
Ultimately, it's the board, should the board of
Ultimately, it's the board of
And I'm,
selectmen.
that's what I'm
Request
saying,
from the town
that's
board.
what I'm saying. As a board of selectmen, do you have to speak?
No, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you wanna
Waiting.
talk? I
I'm waiting.
believe the proposal that I said earlier is the way to go to make sure that we're all
Yeah, but
kumbaya. I hate to use that expression, but we all get along. We don't wanna, so that's one thing. Another thing is, do we pull out these pieces of property and start this referral process sooner, so then they start going through the boards, right? Like if there's 10 land,
Like a pre-application
Yeah.
meeting,
you know?
where.
Something like that.
Because we were already discussing, that might be a possibility for.
Yeah, but I think the idea of what Mark suggested of starting to task, this group
Yeah.
with whoever the town decides to hire or put in charge of doing it, his resources, maybe it's somebody in the town manager's office, whoever that person is or that group is tasking them with starting to refine what's in here so that we don't run into this.
But that's when those 6 properties should be identified,
through the process,
part of that
right,
process,
through the process, you
correct?
may
And to
find.
Susan's point, a deed restriction is, it
everybody
doesn't tell you
talking.
I'm
what
waiting
it's
to
restricted
hear.
to.
Correct.
Correct,
And that's not information that's in there, which we would like to know.
okay.
So, I was offering to have that work done, find the fund. As Helen said herself to me, and then here too publicly, time and time again, your words, asked for funding to get this project done, to resolve these things, and you were told, no. We want to
Consistently.
change that.
Helen's
Just like
next.
you're
Helen's
supposed
next,
to.
yeah, I know.
We have your support
Well-
for that.
So
Okay,
So then that would be, go ahead,
let
Helen.
Helen talk.
Helen's got she's got the floor.
I'm still gonna stay on process.
Yep.
And just as Mark read, out of statute that the Board of Selectmen established in the charter, this committee for the purposes stated. So, I have to remind you that 21-8 was asked us by the Board of Selectmen formally. They asked us to put together that policy, including the deaccession section. It's in the minutes. Bobby D attended our meetings twice after that and guided us in developing this process, and it was sent back to the Board of Selectmen and accepted as the process to be followed by this town. So, Mark, I understand everything that you're saying, and I understand what your intent was to come to this committee and what you're asking of us. We are having, I hope, an enlightening conversation, because as much that we don't know as all of us or individually, I could, just as you brought a resolution that you would like all of us to be joining you in this effort to make this come true, that the town wants to deassess all of these pieces. Let's see, I just wrote a note here to myself, and I'm still questioning that state statute that you were quoting. And there's more to it. How about if we bring a resolution forward and that we move that the committee send to the Board of Selectmen a letter, a recommendation carried through the process. To table your action, or whatever terminology might be that was made in August, on August 12th, agenda, in, what was it? I forget now, it was E on the second page. Sending a referral 824 to the planning commission. And that the open space committee asks that you rescind that particular action and follow the town's own process already designated by the Board of Selectmen. And you can put the year, the date, or whatever, and begin the process in that way, so that we then can, to use your words, Mark, show our intent to follow historically how the committee wants to conduct its business.
So Helen, can I
Sure.
say, so I'm not in favor of doing away with what we just did on the planning commission. I don't think that's fair to what we did and, you know, the referral. What I would say is that doesn't trump getting input from the other land use boards so that when the board makes their decision, they have the input. But it wouldn't, I don't know if you could I don't know. But anyway, I would say we've done our thing. It's a recommendation. It's not written in stone. So I think I wouldn't agree to that part, but agree to input from the land use board so that when they go to public hearing, they have that information along with ours. Because going to Mark's point, I don't necessarily, you could do a parallel process. There isn't anything in there that says you can't go, I mean, technically. But in this case, we've already done our piece. I think it's whether or not that's what I would say, because we've, you know.
But what if,
I think
let's say, what if I individually do not agree to jumping to this requested, think of the word, I think it's premature. I think it's premature to everything that we have known, this committee has known to be in place. And I think what should happen, if you want to use the word fair, is to say that since this document exists by the Board of Selectmen's, okay, since 21-8 exists because the Board of Selectmen asked for it and got it, that the process should be what we intended. And that is to review every single piece in this book and get it identified, chosen, categorized, use all those terms, but do the work that is necessary to protect the open space land in this town, as we, the committee, are dedicated to doing. That is what we want to do. And that process is absolutely tantamount to any action to DSS. The work hasn't been finished, and that's what comes first. Before you start talking about deaccessioning.
So I'm gonna point to Susan, but no one's saying that we're taking any action at the Board of Selectmen at this point in time, other than scheduling a public hearing. So, and then, again, as I said before, asking for a recommendation or referral from the land use bodies before we make a recommendation. And the timing, there's no timing issues in here. So that's where I am at this point to get through this, right? And the next step is to figure out the next steps, right? What do we do about these 8 parcels? How do we formalize or whatever the list so that everybody understands what's what? And if it is the way it is written, it is what it is, then that's That's what we rubber
It sounds like,
So
it
Susan,
sounds like what Mark was saying, to your point, it sounds like Mark wants to do exactly that, to look at those 8 parcels at the same time of formalizing or finishing
well,
this.
so
It sounds-
I wanna hear from Susan, but I feel like this parcel's on the table already, right? And I guess I don't see it setting a precedent because it's following the process, right? So it's following the process that's written, you know, to do what this says to do for anything in the inventory classified as town open space. Wait, Susan had her hand up before, and then
Okay.
I gotta figure out a way to wrap
Bring
this
this up.
up,
Yeah, we can
because
wrap
we
it
gotta,
I
Get
just
back
want to
to-
address what Helen said about not having the funding and all of this. So I wasn't on open space when the inventory was done. I wasn't on open space when there were discussions about land that's deed restricted or not deed restricted. I have never felt any urgency to get the land deed restricted or protected or any worry about that because I felt like we had fair processes in place that everyone was comfortable with. And that's why I've never brought it up even once, all the years I've been in open space, has not uttered a word about it because of the ordinance, which went in place specifically to cover issues like we're talking about right now.
so.
And then the other, can I just say one other thing is, well, very short. The other thing is what we've been working on open space is our policies on mowing. So even though we haven't been changing parcels on the inventory, we've been discussing maintenance issues and updating the inventory in terms of reducing maintenance and all of that. The properties on the inventory that are classified as not in any other category, that aspect of the inventory is admittedly not complete because there are parcels with agricultural soils that aren't listed as ag, that could be not classified as anything else, or other, it could have like a notable tree. There's all kinds of things that are special things that aren't categories on the inventory that could be relevant to those parcels that are listed as not anything on the inventory. So I'm just saying, just because it doesn't say there's something special, doesn't mean there's nothing special there. And that's a key point in terms of assessing a parcel as having no value as open space. All of these things are living databases, and if it's not on the NDDB, it could mean no one has ever looked. It's not a definitive thing that there's nothing. So this is the critical thing. This is like our literal lifeline in town. We've been trying to work on mowing policies, lighting policies, all these things to upgrade the health of the community. It's something I take very, very seriously. And that's why I don't want to negotiate on we'll sell some town land in exchange for getting some protected. I'm trying to just spend time on doing the right thing, not creating a lot of work about, all of this sort of stuff. For what?
And I agree, and I don't know why it's an either or. We need to
Right.
protect the open space because that's
Right.
what we need to do.
I would just say respectfully, Margaret, it's been 9 years that, according to Ellen, and I wasn't here, but according to what we've heard tonight, 9 years with very little done.
We've been doing
And-
stuff all the time.
I
We
mean,
just haven't.
relative to actually finishing, this
Yes,
is why
we've
the
been changing
document says-
maintenance and all that
Yeah.
kind of
Doesn't
stuff.
mean that because it's been
That's just
9 years,
referencing
we
the
have to sell it.
inventory.
I'm not saying that we need to sell it, what I'm saying is that there's much more work that needs to be
Yes.
done.
Yes,
Of the
And
inventory.
that's the positive
and
message
we're
that I
looking
came
forward to your
here.
input.
Well,
Okay.
okay.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so,
I'm looking forward to your input on this one parcel, which, as we talked about, is the first in a number of a
Yep.
handful that,
That might be
Okay.
the first thing. We'll look at those handfuls, we'll get all the land use boards to look to see and make referrals to a board of selectmen who will then be able to make the decision based on information.
okay, so so here's where,
But
again,
not before sending it to the planning commission for it.
you already did your referral,
No,
you're
on the
done,
other
you're
six.
out of the window.
No,
Get it on the next
the other
six.
6, the
Sure.
planning
Okay, we're
commission.
not on the other 6
I'm not moving
yet.
any more forward until we see
No, I'm just
Okay.
saying the planning commission would need to weigh in
So
on that.
I'm not saying it again. The only question I have is, the Board of Selectmen is planning to schedule a public hearing, which doesn't say we can't do. And at the same time, I can ask to follow 21-8 to hear from the land use boards and Parks and Rec
That's
within
good.
60 days, which puts you at the December 9th meeting, which is when we would have to make a decision if we want. the question I have, and this is for you, Mark, really, but for you, the public hearing doesn't have to wait for the 60 days. I can schedule the public hearing because I'll collect all the information at the public hearing to have and save for when I hear from the boards. And then the Board of Selectmen will have all those resources to make our decision.
Totally up to you.
Okay, so I think that's the right way to go. As far as the other parcels and the inventory, I think that should be an agenda item for the next meeting that we have to just, it's not for a while.
That'd be December.
So it'll coincide with December, and we'll know what the disposition is, well, this one's before that one, I think. The disposition of this property, what the board agrees, and then how to move forward or start bringing in these other parcels if we wanna sell them to follow this 21-8 process.
Can I ask a question? Why wouldn't you just go to, rather than us taking a look, cause why wouldn't you just, my front yard is one of those parcels, you know what I mean? So as it comes up, use the process that we have.
So we'll find, I don't know, yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not so sure that, cause it feels like you're taking certain, I don't know,
can we just focus on this parcel right now?
Well, but I think you
Like,
said,
that's what's out on the table.
yes, you already said that you're gonna do that
I'm just
with
saying
the-
that this needs to be discussed.
but you said, let's, at the next meeting, take a look at the next six.
Well, let's put
What I'm saying is, why not, no, just let me,
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable with that, and here's why. I think as it comes up, we now know the process we should be using. Use whatever it is, what is it, I'm all these.
21-8.
21-8, okay, I have all these numbers. So we have the process, use that process where you'd come here, do you know what I mean?
Each time one's for sale, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I
My
would do
point
rather
was
than, I mean,
that
and
the
then we
next
could take a look at
Open
it through
Space
his
Committee, this topic should be on the agenda. The open space inventory, whatever we're talking here, to bring it back, to see where we are, to see if there's, I don't know if the board is gonna approve funding a whole open space inventory. I can't tell you till the budget, you know,
Most of the work's
so-
already done.
No
But
one
can
has
we-
ever tried.
Okay, but can we just end this topic by what we're gonna follow 21-8 for this parcel and start with the board scheduling the public hearing? Whether it meets the legal requirements or not, we're following the process, assuming open space is open space, regardless of the type of open space.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that means you're gonna refer it to Open
I'm
Space,
gonna-
Conservation
Gonna
Commission and
schedule a
Culture Parks and
public
Rec.
hearing, and I'm gonna ask those three boards to send us a referral within 60 days, which will have to be back before our December 9th meeting. Within that time, there will have been a public hearing, so we'll have the input from the public, and then the board will have to make a decision based on everything we hear. And then at that point in time, the board can make a decision, yay or nay, to move forward with the sale of the property. It delays this,
Board will have to have a special meeting because they don't meet again until December 9th.
when do they
Or
meet?
first week in December.
December.
But they don't meet
Here's our
for-
meeting
So they meet
schedule.
once a
Happy to
quarter.
have that meeting.
Okay,
So this board would have to schedule a special
December
meeting.
4th.
oh, to go to write the letter?
Well, you have your.
Okay.
To discuss it.
You have to
Okay,
work,
can't
can't
wait.
you?
We could change a work
Is this-
meeting
is this what
into
you're
a full
calling
meeting.
it?
do it, we've done it before.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
he's saying
that's
you
not-
need to do
So
that
we
to
can
make your
we can schedule a
recommendation?
meeting.
Yeah.
Next
Is that
December
to-
4th is
is-
a full committee
It's a
meeting.
full committee.
Yes.
Gotcha,
Okay.
So
gotcha.
it would have to happen before that.
Okay, so that we can do
Can I
that
just
at the
be
end
sure
of
I'm
this
getting
meeting, 'cause Mark
emails?
doesn't.
I don't think I'm getting all the emails.
That's what, yeah, Tom, can you please send the emails to everybody
Okay.
for all the
Yeah,
meetings?
Tom,
'Cause that's
the town
confusing.
manager's office sends those out, but I'll double check that he has everybody
Yeah.
on the.
Okay,
Thank you.
so
I'm
can
sorry.
we move on from that topic if we're gonna follow that process right now?
Yeah, I think
Now,
that's a fair
Can I
process.
add one tiny thing? I know you're gonna be mad. I know, I'm sorry, but I just wanna let you know that we did discuss all this in detail. It's in the minutes from in 2018 and
Okay.
emails that I have. Because I was following this even though I wasn't on the board, and in a comprehensive review of this, the outcome was, from Lisa Hebner, Don Rieger, everybody, that it just didn't make that much sense in terms of the money we were getting from the parcels, the staff time and everything for this. And now since then, we have, as I mentioned at the last work group meeting, we have significant amount of money now that we could use for trees or shrubs or other kinds of stuff to remove the maintenance issue, which is the main reason, which is why we're getting rid of these parcels, is because we have to mow them. And we have solutions for that, so we don't have to mow it.
Okay, and there's other reasons to put things back on the grand list, I mean, there, you know,
But
just,
we need those discussions.
right, from a
That's
bigger,
right.
from a
Let
board of,
that be a
yeah, I'm just
discussion next
saying,
time.
Right.
okay,
Correct.
so we're gonna move on from item 3 to
Yeah.
get to things that I can turn
sorry, I
over
have
to
to
you,
run.
cause I don't know about them. And Mark, I'm gonna say thank you for,
Totally glad to
thank
be
you
here.
Thank you,
for
Mark.
Thanks
staying, I
everybody for
appreciate
the
you coming.
opportunity. Appreciate it.
And I need to leave, I'm going to a Zoom for dark
So
sky
do we
model
need,
ordinance.
so,
That's
does
it. 10 minutes, you're gonna
who's
be late.
gonna,
I know.
wait, who wants to talk about these?
I can do it, I can do it.
Okay, and then I will stay, so I'm gonna move on
Or
to.
you can get weekend
Yeah,
out
it's
too.
very quick.
Okay, that's fine, okay, we're gonna move on to, we're losing our quorum.
Yeah, Susan
Mark-
and I can do the rest of this.
Yeah,
You guys can do that.
yeah, so
We
I,
can table, the Stillwood thing, is that?
Stillwood
you
thing's
have
easy.
4 more items on here.
So we've had, I'll start, Susan, you wanna
Yeah.
fill in after?
Yeah,
So we've had a student from Simsbury High School, Susan and I met with him, he's doing his capstone project, we met with his faculty advisor, about the Stillwood open space, it's off of Stratton Brook Road, and in between Stratton Brook Road and Sand Hill Road is where this property sits. It's got trails through it, some invasive species, some dumping, illegal dumping's been in there. The student's been going through, cleaning up the trails, marking them. He's identified, with Susan's help, he's identified some invasive species areas that he's pulling those and disposing of those things. He identified a couple of larger illegally dumped furnace and a barrel that the parks crew is gonna take out in the next few weeks on a slow day. And he's really cleaned up the trails. It's a really nice spot, quiet back there. I think it's a nice resource for the
Yeah.
neighborhood. He approached us about the project. I think he's done a good, I peeked my head in there twice over the
Yeah.
summer. He's done a really nice job.
Yeah.
So that's the update. Anything you wanna add to that?
Well, we've
no.
discussed that project
Yeah,
before, and
yeah,
I
he's moving along.
That's
He's
a
nearly
fun
done.
meeting.
Yeah, he's
so
nearly
we
done.
just wanted to update and
Nice to
everything.
have such good news.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
one,
It's a good project.
one resident over there who's using the trails for ATV use that I will be sending a letter to.
Can you send me a copy of the letter, because
When
I'd
I
like
send-
to
when I
check the
send it,
wording,
yeah.
because I'm working on this kind of stuff
Yeah.
in a number of ways.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as
And there was
I know.
helpful.
I'm trying
It was gonna be a post-vacation thing, so it's gonna happen.
Yeah, put your brain on it.
So that's the Stillbrook thing. The American Chestnut Project, this Simsbury resident who's part of this American Chestnut Project called me a few weeks ago, actually called the town manager's office, he called me as well. We spoke on the phone, basically what they would like to do, they've identified a somewhat healthy American chestnut tree out in the Upper Walker Woods. They would like to come out, collect the seed pods or nuts, I guess, in the burrs.
Yeah.
They wanna collect those. They're identifying these trees all over the Northeast because the chestnuts are dying. They then take those seed pods to a preserve, I guess.
Research,
Preserve, and they hope that they grow up. This tree, from what the gentleman I spoke with told me, the tree probably has a couple of seasons left in it. He seems to think it's on the backside. All the chestnut trees just died off eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So they were surprised to find this, and there must be another one that's pollinating it somewhere nearby, I would
Mhm.
assume. So what I had told them before I went on vacation is that they could come with a ladder, no machinery, not take all the pods, only some of them, so that, we still have our
Yeah.
habitat maintained, things great. If it survives, it's great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's the natural stewardship,
Yeah.
But in interest of helping their project, I said take some. They also reached out again to the conservation, to you and Marjorie was on the email list I saw when I was away, town manager's office. So it sounds like everybody's on the same page. We're gonna allow them to do it. We'd love to get some pictures and to tell the story down the line. So that's where that
Yeah.
stands.
I mean, the only thing I have to add to that is they tagged the tree several years ago. They took a genetic sample to see if it actually is American chestnut. They tagged it a few years ago. I've been watching that tree every year, and this is the first year that it's had nuts like this, and it's just ironic that I happened to look up, see the nuts up there, took pictures of
Yeah.
it, and literally got the
Within the same
email,
week, yeah.
2 days later saying that they found the nuts and they wanted to do this. So anyway, that's all good.
Yeah, it
Well,
seemed like
when
a
you drop me
great
off,
project.
we have a tree in our yard that has always been referred to as the chestnut tree.
Mm.
Take a look at it, it's real
Okay.
healthy. If it were an American chestnut, it'd be super to have that be part of the process as well.
Oh, yeah, we could, they would probably be willing to
You'll
go
see it
check
from
it
the
out.
driveway, yeah.
Okay.
And then the last thing with the website streaming updates, this is something Susan and I have been, and all of us have been discussing for the better part of a year and a half, 2
Maybe,
years.
yeah.
I don't wanna make it seem longer than it is, but it probably was 2 years. So we sat down at the beginning of the summer, we updated the Open Space Committee's webpage on the Town of Simsbury website. So that, I thought we did a good job at that point. Over the summer, we added a couple of more things that Marjorie had asked to, and then today I updated it with some more items that Susan had found over the last few weeks. So if you get a chance to take a look at it, I think it's pretty well organized now. And then each of the headings has some subheadings with links to valuable information regarding native plants, town policies, dark skies, research, things like that. The one thing we'll be adding is that white space, that
The corrupt light pollution,
file.
light
Yeah,
pollution.
it'll be very quick add once you get it to me.
Yeah.
So that, in a.
We're looking for photos, if people have
Yeah.
images to add to the website, make it look, nice.
Just into it right now.
No, all those links on the left now have like sublinks.
Yeah.
There's
And we
fewer, but they're kind of,
Okay.
well,
We put some things about the trees in there. And
did you put in the thing about the American chestnut?
I did.
Oh, excellent, cool.
It looks a little different than everything else, that's the first one I tried to do today, so I might go back and clean that up, but it's on there. I couldn't get the picture on there yet though. So if you have a picture of the tree you wanna send me, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
And that is, I think, all of the updates, and Marjorie had some things she wanted to talk about upcoming events, but she's actually starting in 3 minutes.
She left me a
Oh,
note.
she has conservation now?
No,
Oh.
there's a dark sky Zoom seminar.
Oh, got
Yeah.
you.
6 o'clock, I think she wanted to publicize.
Yeah, 6 o'clock, dark sky model regulations. So Dark Sky International has been working to develop municipal regulations that this would, I believe, be through zoning. So Marjorie's talking about that. I've also given some presentations, and I have one coming up at the Connecticut Historical Society on November 14th. Marjorie also wanted to mention on Sunday, September 22nd, and Sunday, September 29th, there's a continuing series at Roaring Brook Nature Center. One is Critters in the Garden, and the other one is Butterflies and Something for the Birds. And also Simsbury Land Trust has a series this fall on forests. They have some films, they have some speakers, they have a trip to Harvard Forest. I'm giving a talk on November 18th, I believe. But definitely check out the events that they have all scheduled, so.
14th is the one on the dark sky, you said, is that it?
That's at the Connecticut Historical Society in Hartford. That's it.
Just tell me again, the hearing was September,
No, that we're just scheduling it.
so you have, but what was the proposed date that you mentioned? 27?
Well,
September 23rd.
Is our
possibly.
next meeting.
23rd.
Yeah.
No, September 9th, you were gonna
So we're scheduling it
schedule it on the 9th
and
for the
asking for
23rd.
you guys with 60
Yeah,
days
you
to the
could- yeah,
boards.
Yeah, you sound like
But
you
we
wanna do it
can-
further out.
They have till the 60 days,
Yeah.
within 60 days.
Yeah.
We can have the public hearing anytime from the 9th to
Anytime after the 23rd, I think you said.
23rd. is-
23rd or after.
Yeah, that's when I was targeting,
Yeah.
but hopefully we don't forget what we hear. So, anyway, I'll figure it out for Monday, but it is on the agenda. And we can include the 21.8 agenda we were discussing, because that's really what we're doing, right now. So,
May I ask if it shows on the minutes that I didn't get a chance to say that I was agreeing with Susan as far as the, how the list was put together and why.
okay,
So just let it be reflected there, I didn't get to say
he's
that.
got it recorded.
I don't know that the others did either, but
Alright, so I think with that, could ask for a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Good night.
thanks a
Good to see you.
lot.